Okay, let's dive into this fascinating case from the Philippine Supreme Court. It pits a simple deadline against the very essence of a fair election.
So here's the big question, right? Can filing a document late actually decide an election? On the surface, you think, well, rules are rules. But what happens when a rigid deadline clashes with something way more fundamental, like the public's right to know if their elected official is even qualified to hold office? This case shows us how a simple procedural rule can spark a major legal battle over the very definition of justice. To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. We'll start with the technicality that kicked this all off, then see how the Supreme Court got involved. We'll unpack this powerful legal idea of substantial justice, look at other similar cases, and finally, we'll connect all the dots to see why this single ruling has such huge implications. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This all started with a petition filed by Ma Zero Rose de Guzman-Lara. Her goal? To disqualify a proclaimed official, Manuel Mamba, from his position as governor. Now, the dismissal here is the key. The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, that's the body that runs Philippine elections, didn't even weigh the evidence. They didn't rule on Mamba's qualifications at all. Nope, they just dismissed the case purely on a technicality. It was filed too late. According to them, the deadline was missed, case closed. But it wasn't. Yeah, this case didn't end there. It was brought all the way up to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. And the question for them wasn't about the specific allegations against Mamba, but about the Commission's decision to dismiss the case on a pure technicality.
The Supreme Court's entire ruling really hinged on this powerful legal concept, grave abuse of discretion. And this isn't just a minor mistake or a simple disagreement with the decision. It's about something much, much more serious.
In other words, the Supreme Court wasn't just pointing out a small error. They were saying COMELEC's decision was so arbitrary and unreasonable that it was like they just refused to do their job. This is an incredibly high legal bar to clear, but the court found that, in this case, COMELEC had crossed it. So let's move to the core principle the court used to justify stepping in. I mean, why would they overturn a decision based on a clear-cut rule like a deadline? There has to be a bigger reason, right? And this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The Supreme Court's message was crystal clear. Elections are all about the public's interest. And that interest, the right to have fairly elected and genuinely qualified leaders, is just too important to be derailed by a procedural hiccup. It's really the foundation of voter trust. Essentially, the court reinforced a critical idea. Procedural rules are just tools. They're designed to help find the truth and get a just outcome in an orderly way. They are not meant to become traps or barriers that stop justice from being served. And when a rule gets in the way of that ultimate goal, especially in a case involving public trust, something has to give. Now, you might be thinking this was a unique one-time decision, but it's not. This ruling is part of a consistent judicial philosophy of prioritizing the substance of a case over procedural nitpicking, particularly when it comes to elections. Just look at this comparison. In our main case, Lara v. Mamba, COMELEC used a deadline to dismiss the case. But in another case, Ahmad v. COMELEC, the commission declared a vice presidential candidate a nuisance because he supposedly lacked a national network. Well, the Supreme Court stepped in there too, pointing out that having a national network is not a qualification for vice president in the Constitution. In both instances, you see the court correcting the commission for elevating its own rules above the fundamental principles of justice and law. So what does all this mean? What is the crucial takeaway from this balancing act between rigid rules and true justice? This isn't just about one case or one candidate. It's about a fundamental principle. The system has to serve the people. This ruling affirms that the public's right to a fair election is paramount. It reminds us that procedural rules are the servants of justice, not the masters. And it highlights the vital role of the Supreme Court as a check and balance, making sure that powerful bodies like an election commission don't lose sight of that ultimate goal. And this leaves us with a crucial question. If rules can be set aside for the sake of justice, where do we draw the line? I mean, deadlines and procedures exist to create order and finality. This case perfectly captures that ongoing tension between following the letter of the law and achieving its spirit, a delicate balance that is absolutely essential for any fair and democratic process.